Hello, this is Angelia, and you are listening to or watching the podcast Why You Do What You Do. The podcast that talks about human development and psychology to maybe help you figure out a little bit more about why you do what you do. And last time we were talking about drug use. And this is definitely a conversation you should have with your young people because they are the most vulnerable. And we're going to take back up on that. As young adults mature, settle down, and take more responsibility for their future, they tend to cut down on drug use. So, our young people are out having fun. That's what they do. Once you're over 18, you get out into the world, that's what it's all about for you. And they're going to experiment. That's just a fact of life. But if you talk to them and let them know, hey, this is not good. I love you and I don't want you doing this because this kills people, and find out some examples, some statistics. You don't have to be, super mean about it because then they're not going to listen to you. You need to be like someone explaining something, be a little authoritative. That's the best type of parenting there is. But, the good thing about it is once they get to be about 30 years old, they're settling down. They're kind of done with all that, and they're, building a firm foundation under their life, probably getting married, starting to have kids, and things of that nature. So, one of my sons, or actually two of my sons, I didn't find about the other one until later, dabbled, and decided it wasn't for them, and I'm thankful for that, because that would have killed me if anything would have happened to them. Although 38.5% of all adults aged 26 and older have tried illicit drugs, most commonly marijuana, only 4.2% are current users. So, 38, we ain't going to use halves in here, 38%, because there's not half a person, 38%, I love it when they give those statistics, 3.6 the family, 2.3 kids, and it's like, how is there 0.3 kid? But anyway, there's not a point person. So 38% of all adults in their 20s have tried drugs. Only 4% stick with it. So that's a pretty small, statistic there. So hopefully, if you've been authoritative with your kids and talked to them about things, they might try. There's peer pressure, let's face it. Other people's gonna try and talk them into stuff, and they might actually do it. But, that's usually just a thrill thing. They do it the one time, and then that's over. Thank goodness. But the one time can kill you. Because, they were talking about the meth going around here where I live, being laced with fentanyl. And people were dying. So, talk to them people. Tell your young adults that one time can even kill you. So, just don't. Just don't. Long-term marijuana use is associated with significant losses in memory and attention. And, that's the jokes about the potheads, They can't remember anything and they're just out in space somewhere. And it does affect your brain. Now, I had a neighbor that had cancer and had glaucoma and everything, and they had a prescription and they were using it, and it was helping them. They ended up having cancer in a lot of their body and ended up passing away. So, it was helping them, and that was the important thing, because when people are gonna go, you want them to be comfortable, as comfortable as possible. Chronic heavy cocaine use also can impair cognitive, I'm sure it's going to say functioning. Hey, yes, it does, functioning. See, I know my stuff. Many baby boomers who began using drugs in their teens or early 20s and continued to do so now have severe drug-related, medical problems. And that's true. I know of a few adults who have got some serious health issues, and there's not a good outcome there. So if you can kind of nip this in the bud, and tell these youngsters this is not a way to go, just go get some therapy, learn how to deal with reality and not have to escape it, because sometimes realities are not good, and sometimes people are looking for an escape. But it's better to go get some help than to escape. Indirect influences on health and fitness. Apart from things people do or refrain from doing, which affect their health directly, there are indirect influences on health, and that can be a lot of things. Among the most important are income, because if you don't have the money to buy food, I went to a nurse practitioner. She was not very good. And one of the things she kept telling me was I needed to buy, fresh meat and produce and things like this. And I don't know where you live and what kind of money you got coming in, but on my budget, fresh meat was a luxury. That was a rare thing. Our meat came out of a can. Pretty much still does. Occasionally we indulge, but that's only if the hubby gets a bonus check and there's some extra money. Otherwise, our meat comes out of a can. So she was telling me, oh, you need to go. Oh, like Dolls has this steaks and whatever. It's like, I can tell you're a doctor or nurse practitioner and you live out in the East End, because that's a store that was only out in the East End. It's closed now, but that's not reality for a lot of people. So if they don't have the income to get the good food, it's not going to happen. Education, again, if you're living in poverty, you can't afford to go to college. Now there are the loans and the grants and everything like that, but eventually when you get out, you're going to have to pay that back. And oh my gosh, that usually starts right away. If you're an adult especially. I know when I looked into it, I was going to have to pay close to $300 a month to finish, my degrees at a local school. And they would not allow that to be deferred because of my age. So it's like I was a single mom, with 3 kids at home. There's no way I could afford that. I couldn't afford that payment for that, education. So I had to take classes online at, online schools and things, and private schools. My goodness. Excuse me, I got a little, probably the same nap from yesterday, flying around here bugging me. I hate summer. I don't mind summer. I don't like the bugs that summer brings. And every time somebody opens a door, they come on in like they're invited. But if you can't afford the education, you're not going to get it. Race or ethnicity, people don't like to talk about that, but the facts are more minority races are impacted more adversely on health. There are genetic factors and there are poverty factors. And gender. Let's face it, I've had a few sexist doctors in my day. And you can tell it. And a very, very sexist disability judge. And like I said, the lawyer that I talked to said she heard him talking in the little coffee room they had, and the one said, oh, I don't like to give a woman disability. And the other one's like, oh yeah? And he said, yeah, they can always get a man to take care of them. Man can't get someone to take care of them. Nice that your sex plays a factor in that. And because it shouldn't, well, why should we have to have a man if we don't necessarily want one? But so sometimes we're discriminated against, and that's unfortunate. And men also have more health issues, serious ones, than women, but women have more frequent ones. And we were reading yesterday about how that might have to do with women being more in touch with their bodies and how they feel, whereas men are not always thinking about that. Relationships also seem to make a difference. because, if you're in healthy relationships, you're going to be more healthy. Socioeconomic stress and race or ethnicity. The connection between socioeconomic status and health has been widely documented. So there's been a lot of studies on this. So, there are facts. Higher income people rate their health as better and live longer than lower income people. And that's because they can afford to go to the doctor, they can afford better food, better, medical care, the drugs, etc., than people who are poor can. And that's just a fact. Education is important too. Again, if you get educated, then you're going to know some things. And if you don't, then you're not. To put that as nicely as I can. The less schooling people have had, the greater the chance that they will develop and die from communicable diseases, injuries, or chronic ailments such as heart disease, or that they will become victims of homicide or suicide. That's because of usually the neighborhood that they're living in. This does not mean that income and education cause good health. Instead, they are related to environmental and lifestyle factors that are likely to be causative, meaning they prevent some of the bad health problems. So, being well-to-do and living in a nice neighborhood doesn't necessarily prevent everything, but if you are well-to-do and living in a nice neighborhood, it's more likely that you have the money for good food. You can afford to buy your medicine, you can afford health care, which is going to make you healthier, of course. Poverty is associated with poor nutrition, substandard housing, exposure to pollutants and violent behavior, and limited access to health care. Because if you're poor, the money's not necessarily there. I've mentioned on here before the day where I had one burrito to feed me and my 3 kids, and I cooked it and I split it in fourths, giving myself just the sliver end, basically all bread, giving them the part with the meat and the beans in it. And the next day I went and applied for food stamps, and people would say whatever they want about that, but I knew my kids needed better food. We could not be splitting a burrito on Friday, waiting for me to get my paycheck when we got home. That's not okay. So this is what people have to deal with. And I was working basically 5 jobs. I had a daytime job. I was running a ministry. I was teaching adult ed at local schools. I taught at one of my son's schools, which was cool because he was playing soccer, and so after I got done with my class, I go watch him play soccer and then take him home. So that worked out good. I was running a charity. I was doing arts and crafts and writing and things, so I was doing anything I could, still basically I do, as much as I can do, to bring in money, because I had kids and the ex was doing the bare minimum. Substandard housing. I know people who live in what they call the projects, and sometimes there are problems with leaky roofs, pipes, sewage problems. I live in a 2-bedroom, less than 1,000 square foot house. When I was a single mom, there were some issues that needed addressed, and I had to force our landlord, my ex-husband, to take care of them, or I was going to turn him in for being a slumlord because his name was still on the deed, so it was his house. Exposure to pollutants and violent behavior. I live right next to a highway and across from an airport, and there's a train track behind me, and there's a cemetery on the other side. Isn't that coincidence? And my son works downtown in a research hospital, and he sees violence going on in the streets all the time. He said he calls them crackheads out there, fighting people, trying to rob people and stuff all the time. He said he's had a couple looks. People look at him, then look twice, and then go and go that way. So I guess they figure maybe he's big enough. It's not worth their trouble. I don't know. But you know, the limited access to healthcare is a thing, because I used to be on Medicaid and I'd have to go to the clinics, and there were a lot of mix-ups. One of the clinics mixed my records and another woman named Angela, with no I in her name, Coleman, who lives out in the West End, and they mixed our records together, and that, to my knowledge, has still not been straightened out. That's one of the things that was a problem when I applied for disability, is that her records and mine are mixed together, and the clinic's like, we have no way of telling whose was whose, you know. But it's like, well, I know, and they can't take my word for that. So, but then when Obamacare, as people call it, came in, I was able to go to a individual private doctor and get better care. And I believe it saved my life, because he started giving me the proper medication, the proper, you know, advice on things. And, you know, at one point, my red cell size was at 24. Now, it went down to 10, which my doctor said not even to worry about. He called that full remission. Now it's back up to 12, though. So, you know. But if you're living in poverty, you can't afford good health care. Indeed, the gap in health care across America, between rich and poor in the United States, has widened. Better educated and more affluent people have healthier diets and better preventative health care and medical treatment. And that's just a fact of life. And I know that from living on both sides of that fence. You know, like I said, when I was single, I was living way below poverty level, and doing the best I could, you know, banging it out, trying to bring in as much money as I could, and still it wasn't enough. So it was a problem. They exercise more, are less likely to be overweight, and smoke less. And of course, bless me, Lord. One of my sons, you know, goes to the gym. The other two are talking about going to the gym. And of course, you have to have the money to afford a gym membership to do that. And if you have to work all the time, you don't have time to walk around the block or anything. When my kids were little, we used to walk around the block. But of course, you know, once I was a single mom, I had to work. I had to come home and work on my business, and the charity's business, and, you know, anything else I could squeeze in, help them with their homework, you know, let them go outside and play, fix dinner, take care of the household business, take care of the housework, get the baths going, get them to bed. There was no time for exercise. You know. So, you know, yeah, overweight happens. You know, and thankfully I didn't smoke, but, you know, like I said, there were smokers when I was a kid who I was around secondhand smoke, so that's not ideal. And I do have nodules in my lung. I have 4 nodules in this lung, so that's not cool. They are more likely to use alcohol, but to use it in moderation. So more affluent people have a drink or two with the friends, whereas people who are not so affluent might use the alcohol as an escape. And like I say, nothing you have to use to escape is really an escape. It's just a delay. Because when you come out of that alcohol stupor, when you come off of that high, you know, when, you know, whatever else you're using is over, you're back to reality. So it's not really an escape. But that's where I'm going to leave you for today. Please like and share this educational program so we can spread it around the world. If you want to help me out, subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you want to help me out even more, go to my Patreon page and become a patron. That's all. Until next time.